Hello, and welcome back to our little farm. It's finally that time of year where the weather's warmed up and we're through the worst of the rainy weather. So, today we're going to be covering an important garden chore that needs to be done throughout the growing season. I'm going to demonstrate how we go about pruning our tomato plants.
We're only going to be pruning the indeterminate tomato plants. Now, the difference between indeterminate and determinate is that indeterminate tomato plants will continue to grow and set fruit and make flowers and get bigger the whole season long, whereas determinate tomatoes grow to a certain size, put on all their flowers and fruit, and then ripen all the fruit at once. So we're going to approach trimming these different, namely that determinate tomatoes we're not going to prune and the indeterminates we will. So the first thing that I want to point out is the parts of the tomato plant so you can kind of tell what you're looking at during this process. You can see the main stem here coming up in the middle of the plant. Off of the main stem, you will have lateral branches that have leaves on them. These will also be where the flower clusters and eventually the fruit will form. Oftentimes, in between the lateral branches and the main stem, you will get a secondary stem shoot emerging out of the side of it. We call these suckers, and this is what we will be pruning off of the plant. Generally speaking, I will prune down to 1 or 2 main leaders, and I will show you what that looks like here. Here's a good example of a sucker coming off between the main stem here and the lateral branch. See, coming right out of the armpit here. They tend to have this little cluster that looks like a new crown of the tomato plant, which I'll show you in just a moment. You'll notice that most of the lateral branches will have these suckers emerging from them at this stage. Up at the top of the tomato plant, there is a cluster here at the very top. Where the tomato plant will be growing from. This is called the crown of the tomato plant. We don't ever want to cut off the crown of the tomato plant. It will continue to grow from here and continue to put out new branches and new fruit. Now that we know what we're looking for, I can show you how we go about pruning this. And this could not be simpler. Just reach in with your pruners anywhere you see one of these suckers and just cut it. That's all there is to it. So we're going to get all these suckers removed and then I'll show you what the plant looks like afterward. Got the tomato plant all cleaned up. The suckers removed. I got it trimmed down to 1 main vine. Generally speaking, over the course of the season, this will split into 2 or 3, and I will generally let it split into 2 or 3 main vines. But for the moment, I tend to cut it back to 1. When you start dealing with suckers that are too near the crown of the tomato plant, sometimes I will second guess whether these are actually the main crown or whether they're suckers. Usually, I would just leave this alone. Once the main crown of the tomato plant grows a little further, it becomes very clear which is the sucker and which is the main leader.
This is a small chore in the garden that has a pretty dramatic impact on the health and productivity of your plants. Shaping your plants in this way causes them to grow as an upright vine instead of as a thick hedge. This improves airflow, which reduces the risk of fungal and bacterial diseases, as well as making it easier for you to harvest your ripe tomatoes. If you fail to perform this step, it is certainly not the end of the world, as you will still get plants that produce tomatoes. You may just end up with bigger plants that produce fewer tomatoes.
Sometimes, despite your best efforts to keep a tomato plant pruned, you'll get a split in the main stem of the tomato plant. This doesn't necessarily look like I had a sucker that split off. It looks like the main stem just splits in two at a certain point. You can even see that there's another sucker growing right out of the side here. This is not a problem. This is just a thing that they do. This particular variety is particularly bad at this. I will generally let this continue to split this way. I would not make the choice to cut half of this plant away at this point.
Then just repeat the process as needed throughout the season. If you're in the Pacific Northwest and would like to garden along with us, follow for more.